week 3 of the masterclass with Caramia Wellness, and we're going to be talking about all of the contaminants in your food system. So not such a happy topic, but something that we really need to know about to make sure that we're eating clean, safe food for us. So tonight I want to just start by talking about an expedition to the South Pole in 1911, and there were 2 teams that took this expedition, and the journey that they took them through some really harsh weather, and the miles that they went 1,400 miles, which is the equivalent of a round trip from New York to Chicago. Can you imagine walking that? I certainly can't. So the 2 teams, both teams doing the exact same journey. One team took the approach where they were going to do 20 miles every single day, regardless of the harsh weather. And the second team decided that they would do as much as they possibly could every day that they had good weather and hunker down on the days that they did not have good weather. And can you guess which team won the race? The team that did 20 miles every single day, regardless of the weather. And their consistency and perseverance is what got them to the South Pole first. And this is so true for your goals as well. I'm Kara Joseph, a whole foods nutritionist, and tonight we're going to be talking about different contaminants that we find in our food supply today. These are topics like GMO, additives in your foods, pesticides, synthetic vitamins, pasteurization, irradiation, and fake meat. So let's get into these topics. But first, I want to recap things from last week and the goals that you should be setting for yourself up to this point. So if you have your diet logs readily available, I want you to grab those and grab a pen or a highlighter or something. And I'll just give you a minute to grab those diet logs. And when you get them in your hand, I want you to go through, if you haven't done this already, and just highlight any obvious sugar. So remember, that was from week 1 when we were eliminating sugar, straight sugar, like sweets and cookies and candy, and in your coffee and that sort of thing. So do that now. That should be pretty easy to find. Hopefully your pen or highlighter is not moving. And then the next thing I want you to do is I want you to highlight any refined carbohydrates. So that's like pasta, chips, crackers, bread, that you had more than your goal amount. So we were setting an ultimate goal for a half a cup, but if you're a carbaholic, you were probably setting it to more like a cup last week. So wherever you went over that goal, so maybe you had a sandwich for lunch and then pasta for dinner, that would be going over your goal for carbs for that day. So highlight anything that you went over the goal with for the refined carbohydrates. This doesn't include fruits and vegetables. All right, so the reason this is important is twofold. So remember, the carbohydrates don't provide you with nutrients, and nutrients are really what feed your body, help maintain it, and help heal it to grow new cells inside of your body. But every pound is 3,500 calories. So that sounds like a lot, but in reality, if you just skimp a little bit every day, so let's say you normally have 2 slices of bread with a sandwich and you got rid of one of the slices of bread, that's 100 calories right there at lunch, and maybe you had a salad or something instead. And then in the afternoon, you normally have pretzels or something that is kind of empty calories. And instead you switched it for, say, some carrots and cucumbers, and those have little to no calories. And if you just were able to shave out 200 calories from your eating habits every single day, that's about a half a pound a week. And it's very simple to just do a little bit of tweaking, and you'd be obtaining the ultimate goal, which is to get more nutrients into your diet. So if you are doing this to lose weight, keep that in mind and swapping out those high carb items for more fruits and vegetables. Okay, exercising. You should be exercising at least 15 minutes a day, if not more. Tracking your progress. So just like those guys in the South Pole, consistency every single day is what's important. So if you kind of fall off on Saturday and Sunday, you're going to gain that half a pound right back again and just kind of be on this hamster wheel forever. So we already did the refined carbohydrates, 1 cup to a half a cup, depending on where you're at with that. 6 half-cup servings of vegetables every single day. You should be eating twice as many vegetables as you are as fruits. Shop without a list. So this is optional, and cook without a recipe. If you love to cook and you love to use recipes, by all means, continue to do that. Same thing with shopping. If you have a system that works for you, keep it. But if you're feeling overwhelmed by all of this, chuck the list for the grocery store, make it while you're there. Find some really great ingredients that don't need a recipe and they can stand on their own. And then drinking half your body weight in ounces every day of water. Hopefully everybody's doing all of those things. But remember, this is a lot to take on in 6 weeks. When clients come to see me in the office, often this takes them months and sometimes a full year to be able to accomplish. So go slow, go at your own pace. If you have just one of these goals every week, maybe it's exercise this week and drink some water, that's okay too. Just keep moving forward with what you're doing. All right, so let's get into the heart of the matter. So we're talking about those food contaminants in our food supply. And this is a graph that was off of the CDC, and it talks about autism rates from 2000 to 2016. And in the year 2000, autism rates, according to the CDC, were 6.6%. And at that time, we were really good about detecting autism. So this is not about us being able to pinpoint kids with autism. At that point, we were really good at that already. So rates were 6.6%. And then in 2016, just 16 years later, we went up to a whopping 18.5%. We are failing at the fight against autism, and children are suffering. And most of this comes from something in our environment that is really hurting our human race. And it's not just autism that's on the rise. Other ailments or diseases such as Alzheimer's and cancer are also growing and not going down. So we really have to take a hard look at what is in our environment. What are we doing to ourselves as humans that is causing this number to go up? So here is a beautiful picture of some papaya that you would think is helpful for me. This is a healthy item, but in fact, papaya is a GMO crop. And one of the greatest tragedies right now is that misrepresentation of healthful food that is really harmful. And this papaya I would consider not healthful. It is a GMO product and could actually be harmful to you. Could your food actually be making you sick? I say yes. Based on the research that we have now today, the toxins that are in our food supply are the highest they have ever been. GMOs started in the 1970s and have been used more and more and more with every decade, along with other additives in our food supply. And now sometimes it's hard to determine what is fake and what is real. Conditions like ADHD, depression, IBS, eczema, heart disease, anxiety, mental fog, migraines, the big one isn't on here, which is cancer, all we can attribute to in some part to what's in our food supply today. So what would be considered food contaminants? GMOs, food additives, different types of fats, synthetic vitamins, pasteurization and irradiation, fake meats, and other contaminants in our real meats. The first thing that we're going to talk about is GMOs. So there are several crops that are GMO crops. Currently, it's alfalfa, apples, canola, cotton, corn, papaya, potatoes, soy, sugar beets, and summer squash. That doesn't sound like a lot, and you probably are thinking, well, I could probably avoid those. But soy, potatoes, corn, these are items that are rampant in not just our food that we eat, but they're also in things like synthetic vitamins, medication that you're taking. They're used for plant-based fuels and then get into our air supply. So these are rampant throughout not just our food supply, but in other things as well that affect us. All right, so why on earth do we want to be careful about the usage of GMOs? So first of all, GMO stands for genetically modified organisms. And GMOs were created, these were a special type of seed that was created so that farmers could plant the seeds and use glyphosate or the herbicide Roundup and be able to spray their fields, not have a lot of weeds, and still be able to get a full crop to harvest. And this sounds like a dream come true for most farmers, because weeds, if you've ever had a garden, you know how horrible they can be. But the problem is that we didn't really realize was that you're now spraying herbicide all over your crops, and those GMO plants also take them up into their plant themselves. So now you have the herbicide directly into the plant and it's going to the market. Glyphosate has been linked to problems within our gut microbiome, cancer. There have been several large lawsuits and the plaintiffs have won, accusing that it caused them to get cancer because of their use. So mainly in those particular lawsuits, it was the use of glyphosate. So the genetically modified organism is not naturally occurring in our environment, and that is definitely a concern by itself. But the bigger concern is the glyphosate itself that it's taking into the plant, how it's altering the plant, and then how it alters us and affects us once we eat it. Okay, the next one is food additives. This is a great example of all the things that can be in our food. Here on the left, there's things like dye, BHT, TBHQ, EDTA, MSG. What on earth do all these abbreviations mean? And honestly, you don't even need to know. All of these things in our foods, these are chemically derived additives. They are definitely not natural and do not belong in our food supply. So on the right side, we have all this huge list of ingredients, and on the bottom there's a bowl of Fruit Loops, and then there's a bowl of, or a picture of some blueberry muffins. Which one do you think that all those ingredients belong to, the Fruit Loops or the blueberry muffins? If you look closely in there, you can probably guess, but it's the blueberry muffins. And blueberry muffins, if you've made blueberry muffins lately, there's a handful of ingredients in there, definitely not all of those ingredients. And this is where we get into trouble. When manufacturers create products like blueberry muffins, if you made some blueberry muffins today, especially if you live in, say, Louisiana, where it's warmer, more humid, and you leave that out on your counter for the day, it's going to mold in 24 hours. The muffins that are here listed with all of these ingredients will not mold for a long time, and that's concerning. Your body doesn't need all those kind of chemical additives added to it. And that's the big takeaway for all of these things. These unnaturally occurring substances definitely do not belong in our body because they create imbalances that then create disease for us. All right, let's talk about bad fats. So the big bad guy is trans fats or hydrogenated oil. You'll hear them used interchangeably, and basically a trans fat is created when hydrogen is added to an oil and hydrogenates it. The reason why manufacturers do this is so that it's shelf stable, because that's the name of the game. If you can create a product and have it be shelf stable for 6 months or more, then that's really great for a food manufacturer. But for the consumer, that's not really great, because you're putting all these synthetic additives to be able to make it to do that are not healthy for us. In 2013, the FDA determined that trans fats were no longer considered generally recognized as safe for general consumption of the public, but yet we still see them in foods. And the Institute of Medicine determined that there was no safe level of consumption for hydrogenated oil. One of the biggest concerns about hydrogenated oil is because it's been hydrogenated, it then is very difficult for your body to process out and eliminate, and it can take over 2 months to be able to get it out of your body. So the half-life of hydrogenated oil in your body or trans fats is something like 50 days, that's just the half-life. It's not worth it to be eating those baked goods or donuts for that. All right, canola oil and soybean oil. So, here you are, you're trying to eat healthier, you're eating salads, but look at the back of the label of your salad dressing, and guaranteed it's got soybean oil in it. Why canola oil and soybean oil are not good? They're not good for 2 reasons. The first one is those are 2 GMO crops. So you're going to be ingesting a whole lot of glyphosate that is not healthy for your body, as well as a genetically modified organism that was never intended to go into your body in the first place. The second reason is that the process to make canola oil and soybean oil is very involved, and they use a lot of deodorants and heavy heating to be able to create a sellable product in the grocery store. So tonight, your homework when you get off of this video webinar is to go onto YouTube and type up how canola oil is made and watch a video of this. And it's pretty disgusting. It starts out as this gray sludge that they then deodorize and add other additives to it to be able to get it to be that clear, beautiful oil that we see in the supermarket. But it certainly never started out that way and was never intended to be that way. Some better fats to use would be things like butter, coconut oil, avocado oil, sesame oil, olive oil. All of those are great fats to be using. Okay, synthetic vitamins. So there's a whole list here of synthetic vitamins that I'm not going to go over, but we so often go to the grocery store and we're shopping and we see these synthetic vitamins added to the food, and things like vitamin D or the amino acids or folate, we think, oh, well, that's just a vitamin, that's not harmful. And in some regards, that is true. In small amounts, these synthetic vitamins are not going to be harmful. They're probably the least harmful of all the additives that we're talking about tonight. But when you're eating a huge amount of packaged foods, especially for young children, you're taking in a lot of things like iron that is not healthy, because these are synthetic vitamins that create imbalances within the body and then create dysfunction. And we want to try to avoid that. So anything with these synthetic vitamins, if you can avoid them, that's the best way to go. All right, the next thing we're going to talk about tonight is irradiation of your food. So different products are irradiated. Beef and pork can be irradiated. Crustaceans like lobster, shrimp, and crab, fresh fruit and vegetables. lettuce and spinach, poultry, seeds for sprouting. So if you go buy seeds to put in your garden, eggs can be irradiated, shellfish, spices, and seasoning. And this is really difficult. And the reason why you don't want irradiated food is really because it harms the nutrient value in those foods, and that's the reason why you're eating them in the first place. Most of us, I think, if you had your choice, you could have a bagel or salad. Most people, if there was no difference, would probably choose that bagel. So if you're eating fruits and vegetables and really working hard to get all this stuff into your diet, and then it's been irradiated, and if it's a GMO sourced food, then the amount of nutrients in it is almost nothing. And that's a shame, because we're sold on thinking that this is healthy, and it ends up not being at all. Irradiation is also tricky because it's not well labeled. So irradiated food, although it should have a label, typically doesn't. And we're going to talk later about places to shop where people are more informed, there's better labeling, and you can have a better idea of what's been irradiated and what's not been irradiated. So one other point here is that the radioactive isotopes are the gamma rays that are used on the food themselves. Not always, and certainly it's done to sometimes get rid of microorganisms on food when they've come in from foreign countries. So, there's a flip side to that too. We're trying to keep food safe, but then at what cost are we keeping the food safe? Okay, next one is pasteurization. So pasteurization is the same idea or same principle as irradiated food. Different way that they're doing it, but it's to cleanse the food so it doesn't have any kind of harmful microbes on it that would then transfer to us. So the big one that we always think about are milk and dairy products, and pasteurization of those two products is important for many respects because they do have microbes on them. But when we pasteurize them, we kill the nutrients that was in the milk and the dairy products and why we were eating them in the first place. And unfortunately, things like raw milk are illegal in many states, and the raw milk has enzymes in it that protect the milk itself. So do a little experiment if you do have raw milk that's legal in your state, and take a bottle of raw milk and take a bottle of pasteurized milk and leave it in your refrigerator for the next 10 days and see what happens. Your pasteurized milk has no way of protecting itself and becomes sour, and your body will be repulsed by its smell and not want to eat it. And the raw milk, on the other hand, will actually turn to buttermilk because it has those enzymes in it, and it won't go sour. Eventually, if you left it in your refrigerator for a very, very long time, I'm sure it would, but 2 weeks and it will start to be more like yogurt or buttermilk, and you can use it in things like pancakes and muffins. That's because you have the enzymes in there protecting that food naturally, and all the wonderful nutrients that were in the food in the first place are still there and intact, and you get the benefit of why you're drinking the milk in the first place, which are all those wonderful nutrients like vitamin A and K and D. If you go to the grocery store and you see fortified with, that goes back to those synthetic vitamins. And we've grown up thinking, oh, that's a fortified food, that's healthy for us. But in reality, the steps it took to make that food, so white flour, pasteurized milk, have killed all of the nutrients in the food and now there's no nutritional value left. So food manufacturers now have to add in synthetic vitamins to even be able to call it nutritious. There are other pasteurized foods like beer, canned goods, eggs, vinegar. Vinegar is a great example. So again, this is like irradiation. Typically, it won't say pasteurized. Eggs will, milk will, but sometimes things like vinegar won't, but it will say not pasteurized. And that's what you're looking for. So you're not looking for the pasteurization label, you're looking for the not pasteurized label. So when you're shopping for any of these things, look for not pasteurized. Okay, on to fake meat. So fake meat, there's 2 different types of fake meat out there right now in the market. Beyond Burgers, this is a synthetically engineered laboratory meat. And then plant-based burgers, and these are the soy-based burgers that we're used to seeing. So Beyond Burgers, let's talk about those first. The concern with the Beyond Burgers is that they contain 46 novel proteins, according to GMO Free USA. It's 46 novel proteins that don't occur in nature and certainly don't belong in your body. And this is a huge experiment. We have no idea how this will affect our bodies. And if we go back to the GMOs have been in the food supply from the early 1970s. And so now we fast forward 50 years later, and we're only now realizing how it is affecting people in terms of things like cancer rates, autism, infertility. And so the Beyond Burger is just the same thing. It's an experiment. We have no idea what will happen. So the best rule of thumb is if it doesn't occur in nature, it doesn't belong in your body. And then Beyond Burgers and the soy plant-based burgers, both are based in soy. Soy is a GMO product and has the glyphosate in it unless it's organic. And even if it's organic, it's very hard to guarantee that it doesn't have some kind of cross-contamination with GMO soy, because GMO soy is so rampant throughout the entire world. So when you're at, let's say, Dunkin' Donuts, and they have that really tasty looking plant-based sausage in the egg and sausage and cheese biscuit that you're getting, pass on that one. All right, real meat. So real meat is also a concern, although it's a great source of protein in your diet. You want to just be careful about a few things in the actual meat that you're buying. So growth hormones, antibiotics and other medications, poor feed. So a lot of animals are fed GMO-based soy. So now the GMO is in the actual meat itself. Unhealthy conditions that the animals are kept in, and that creates sick animals that then you end up eating, and it makes you sick. So if you're eating meat, of course, I definitely suggest that you eat meat. It's a wonderful protein full of all the amino acids that you need. But buying organic meat or local meat is really important. So let's talk about that next. I'm sure at this point you're wondering, what on earth can I eat? And you probably stopped hearing me around GMO. Well, there's a really easy way to figure out whether or not the food for you is safe or not, and that's looking at the labels. So you don't need to know about food additives or what GMO is or what it's not. Just look at the label, and here's how to do it. So the first one is organic. Organic is already non-GMO. If it's GMO, it can't be labeled as organic. It doesn't have pesticides for the most part. There are some nuances to that, but it is going to be the cleanest, most pesticide-free food in the market that you can buy. And then it's not going to have any kind of antibiotics used in it either, or soy GMO-based feed for the animals. The next level would be non-GMO. So depending on where you are in the country or in the world, you may or may not be able to get organic food. So if you live, say, in the Caribbean, organic food at the supermarket is not readily available. The next best thing is non-GMO. So then at least you're guaranteed that you're not getting GMO-based food. But just remember that if you have the option between organic or non-GMO, buy the organic, because the organic hasn't been sprayed. The non-GMO isn't guaranteeing you that that food hasn't been sprayed with pesticides and still has the pesticides in it when you're buying it. All right, natural. All natural really doesn't mean very much. It just means that at some point it was natural and occurring in nature. They can still put pesticides on it. They can still put a whole bunch of different things into it. So the next step would be to read the label. Go back to that label for those blueberry muffins. If you start reading the label and you don't understand what exactly is in there, skip it. I like to go by the 5-ingredient rule. If I look at something and it has more than 5 ingredients, typically I put it back and find something else just as good with 5 or less ingredients. Or I really take a close look at what all the ingredients are. Maybe there's a lot of listed spices. That's going to give it a lot more ingredients listed on there, but it's just spices, then that's okay. All right, buying local. So the best place to go is a place called localharvest.org. Localharvest.org. That is an excellent website to find either local farmers markets or actual farms in your area. I love this website because you can just put in your zip code and it will tell you what's available around you in either category. When you do go to the farmers market or you go to your local farmer, don't be shy. Just ask them if they spray and if they use GMO seed. Either way, that farmer is always going to be really passionate about what they're doing and want to support and talk to you about whatever their decision is. And just listen to them and then make your own decision on whether you want to buy food from there. Buying local isn't necessarily going to be labeled organic, and that's okay. These farmers do not have the money to get labeling, and most of the organic labeled food comes from much bigger farms that are skimping on other practices like soil quality to be able to get the large volume that they're putting out, unless they're a conglomerate of small farms. And that's really good to do, because then they're just collecting the food from a bunch of small farmers and distributing it out to the public. So the next thing that you can go to are your local co-op. Local co-ops are really a great resource to learn about, are my nuts irradiated or not? And if you go to any local big supermarket where you live, chances are whoever's stocking the shelves has no idea. But you go to your local food co-op, the person stocking the shelves doesn't look at you like you're crazy, probably knows what you're talking about, or has another employee at the store that can answer your question. So that's a really great place if you want to get into things like, I don't want to buy food that's been irradiated. Maybe you've had cancer treatment and you just want to stay away from that, or things that are pasteurized, and you can go and find those kinds of better food choices at a food co-op. And you can find the food co-ops on localharvest.org as well. And then the last thing I'm going to talk about here are CSAs. So CSAs are food shares within a farm. So if you have a local farm that you really, really like, you like their farming practices, ask them if they have a CSA. And this is a food share that you buy into, and you get food from the farm every single week during the growing season. All right, here are your goals for this week. You're going to start buying organic, reducing your carbs to a half a cup if you haven't. If you've successfully accomplished that goal, start switching to things like buckwheat, quinoa, brown rice for added nutrients and better digestibility. 6 servings of veggies every day, no sugar, drink water, exercise for at least 15 minutes a day, write down what you're eating and track your progress, shop without a list, and cook without a recipe if you can. Start where you are, use what you have, and do what you can. Remember, go at your own pace and make this something that's sustainable and easy for you. True beauty comes from within. Your health and vitality create your beauty. So eat those nutrients to make you beautiful. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to open this up to questions. And what I want you to do is I want you to just type your question in your question box, and I will answer them as I see them come up on my screen. I hope that everybody enjoyed tonight's webinar. And this is such a lot of information for everybody to take in. And again, just like with the weekly goals, remember, for many people that come into our office, this takes months for them to accomplish. And part of the reason why we're doing this masterclass is to refresh people's memories that our clients, you get little tidbits when you come into the office, but often there's so much information coming to you at one time that you're not processing all of this at once. And especially with the food contaminants, just take one little piece of information and try to translate that into a goal this week. So for example, if you wanted to tackle the buying organic, the next time you go shopping, try to find organic options as best you can. And then you can get into more things like irradiation and pasteurization. All right, so what fish is safe to eat? So this is a great question. Any wild caught fish, you don't want to buy farm raised fish because of what they're being fed, which is soy pellets, and they're typically GMO based. And you want to buy something from cold, deep waters like the North Atlantic, definitely not the Gulf. So try to find things from the North Atlantic and those cold, deep waters that are not as contaminated as some other waters like the Gulf. That's a better option. Okay. Okay, what do I think about organic canola oil? And also xanthan gum. I also hear that lamb is generally cleaner. Is this true? Yes, it is. I like lamb as an option. Depending on where it's coming from, sometimes I buy the non-organic lamb, or if you have a local farm that you can get lamb from, that is really great. So if you live in an area that's got some local farms, that's a perfect option. Go online tonight and look at how canola oil is made. It doesn't matter if it's organic or not. They both have the same processes, and it will stop you from using canola oil forever. And as far as the xanthan gum is fine, an organic, if you can find it. It might be difficult to find, but if you can find an organic one, that's great. Okay, so I'm just checking the other questions here. They're not always coming up. Okay. Okay, what about fractionated oil? I see mostly with coconut oil. So fractionated coconut oil is great because it stays liquid. So it's really good if you're making products, like if I'm making ozonated water or ozonated oil using fractionated olive oil or coconut oil. That's good because it's liquid, or if I'm using it as a lubricant for something, sometimes if we're doing something in the office and I need a lubricant, I like the fractionated coconut oil. But as far as eating it, go with the minimally processed, unrefined oils. So cold pressed is always better, and the less processed it's been. So fractionated oil for eating, skip it. Okay. What do you think about organic? Oh, canola oil. Okay, got that one already. I'm just reading these as I see them. Okay, so Thrive Market. So have you used the online grocery Thrive Market? I heard it was good. So Yeah, so there's a lot of online resources now, and that's great. Thrive Market, and there's other ones. Blue Apron, I think, is one of them that have all these pre-made things. Just look at the ingredients list and always go for organic. I believe Thrive Market has a lot of organic choices, and that's great. So check them out. Just look at the labels and know that any kind of food manufacturer, whether you have a restaurant or your Thrive Market, it's that your bottom line is your most important thing. And you are going to still use the cheapest sourced products that taste the best for consumers in whatever you're making. So if you can buy local, if you can make it yourself, that's always the best. But I get it. We all have busy lives. Sometimes I go to prepackaged stuff too. Just try to get stuff that's organic, and Thrive Market would be a good option. Okay, we have about 2 more minutes, so if I see another one, I will. Okay, here's a great question. Are nuts, almonds, walnuts, peanuts affected by things you're okay, so no. So you remember, go back to that slide about what are GMO crops. And peanuts are not a GMO crop. Walnuts, there are no nuts currently that are grown GMO. They will be sprayed depending on what kind of nut they are. The real concern with nuts, one is pasteurization. So things like California almonds, I believe, are required to be pasteurized. So, you know, you're eating the almond because it's healthy and nutritious, and then they pasteurize it and boop, that's gone. So try to get nuts that are not pasteurized, and then you want to make sure you get nuts that are not old. So if they've been sitting out like bulk and they don't, you know, they don't turn over a lot, and yeah, your local food co-op, they are going to be turning over a lot and they are going to be fresh. But if they're not and they've been out for a while, those oils and the nuts are going to turn rancid, and then they're not so great for you. So if you eat the nuts and you think, oh, these don't really taste so great, then they're rancid. If you buy ones that are sealed up, might be a little bit better. So just keep that in mind when you're buying the nuts. Don't worry so much about the GMO. What oils can I eat? Coconut oil, avocado oil, sesame oil, olive oil. Think about the plant that it's coming out of. And those are all great plants that we can easily do a cold press on and create oil from the plant without a lot of processing. The problem with canola oil especially is the large amount of processing that it has to go through to be able to actually make it into a usable oil, and that's the concern. Are olive oils good? Yeah, olive oils are great. There's different types of olive oil. So if you have a local olive oil store by you, that's a great place to go because they can tell you which ones can take higher heat and which ones can't. Typically the ones that you're just buying at the regular market cannot take the higher heat. So if you're looking for like roasting with olive oil or a high heat saute with olive oil, either switch to sesame or coconut or butter for the higher heats, or go to your local olive oil store or your co-op, and they will tell you which ones can take the higher heat. All right, we have time for one more question, and then that'll be it for tonight. Next week is gluten-free baking, which I'm very excited about. We're going to be talking about different flours to use, different types of baking recipes, and how to get those to taste really great without the gluten. So I look forward to next week, gluten-free baking. Thank you all for coming tonight, and I will see everybody next Wednesday for week number 4.